Name again is
Jacob.
Jacob. What's your last name, Jacob?
McNeil.
So you are familiar with Lakeview, okay? And then question number 2 asks which of your family members are buried at Lakeview, and you have a great uncle, Uncle Sammy Seagraves, okay? Have you experienced death in the last 5 years? You answered yes. Here's your grandparents.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, all right. So there are 2 terms that we're going to use today, Jacob: pre-need and at-need. Obviously, pre-need is like you and I sitting down here now. At-need means once someone has passed away. Do you know whether your grandparents' arrangements were done pre-need or at-need?
I believe they were done pre-need, but there was like last minute pre-need type deal because they knew they were in this nursing home.
Okay.
But I think with grave sites and stuff, I think that stuff had been done.
Had already been done?
Yeah, on the cemetery portion. But
So the cemetery portion had been done?
I believe so.
Okay. Is that when? So did your parents, was your grandparents, was that your mother or your father's parents?
My mother's. Both of their parents.
Okay. So did your mother participate in that planning process?
Yeah, I believe she did.
Okay, all right. But to the best of your knowledge, everything had already been paid for on the cemetery side?
Yes.
Okay. So did you get a feel for how much of a relief and how much help that was? The fact that your grandparents had gotten that done?
I would say yes, because I mean, my mom has 2 sisters, and it still was, the whole process was still a burden, so.
Okay.
With the whole death process and all.
Okay. Because the other thing that happens oftentimes, one thing that we teach our children, I'm sure your parents taught you, was not to make emotional decisions.
Mm-hmm.
If you love someone and they pass away, how you not going to be emotional?
Right.
So basically, when we don't do something, when we don't do that, we're setting those people up to make emotional decisions. We're setting them up to go against what it is we've been teaching them all their lives.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm glad to hear, that your parents, were able to get this done successfully without a whole lot of problems. Okay. All right. Have you ever discussed your desire for cemetery arrangements? You said no. Okay. So let me ask you a question. Your parents love you, right?
Mm-hmm.
You live with them?
Right now, yeah.
Okay. All right. And you're former military?
Mm-hmm.
Is that right? Okay. How long were you in the military?
4.5 years.
Okay, 4.5 years. Okay. Now, obviously, you have, you can have Uncle Sam to participate in your burial, but that takes you either to Salisbury, North Carolina, or takes you up to Danville, which means if your family wants to visit the grave, there's some travel that's involved. And most of the time, we don't visit the grave for so long. So it could be they're traveling 45 minutes an hour for a 5-minute stay.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
If you stayed locally, there are still some things that Uncle Sam would participate in. He would pay for the bronze part of your marker, which would save you about $2,000. But there's some other things that if you went either place, he would not pay for. If you had not awakened this morning, what type of arrangement would you have expected your parents to do?
Not sure. I mean, I don't know what I want. 22. I mean, I've thought about death, obviously, but I don't know what I want.
Okay, because age has no bearing on death. You probably know some of your peers that have preceded you in death. Do you have any peers that have died in your lifetime?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you know that death really doesn't have an age, doesn't have anything to do with age. So if you had passed away this morning, no idea about what you want your parents to do?
I wanted more of a celebration of life than more of a mourning of death.
Okay, I can go with that. Celebration of life as opposed to mourning of death. I got you. That makes good sense. Now, don't you think that with them, if you had some conversation about this, that would make things easier for them as opposed to them? Because right now, that makes good sense. But I'm sitting here trying to figure out what does that look like. And I'm also thinking that, if you and I had talked about this previously and you'd given me some guidelines, it'd make my job a hell of a lot easier. So you can imagine, you know, and it's not natural for a 22-year-old to sit down and talk to his parents about, if I don't wake up tomorrow, what you need to do.
Right.
But in this day and time, the way things are happening, as crazy as this world is, it's not out of the question either. So that may be something that you give some thought to, okay? And throughout this process, once we finish, be able to share with your parents what it is that we've discussed today and what it is that you've decided. So if something were to happen, all they're doing is facilitating. They're just basically doing what it is that you want done, not what they could try to figure out. Because the fact of the matter is, they can't read your mind in life, and you can't help them from the grave. Okay? All right, so on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being insignificant, 10 being very important, you said it was a 10. Why do you feel like it's so important to do this in advance?
Well, I mean, on a financial standpoint, I believe it's better for financially, you know.
Okay.
And then on a, you know, just a kind of a morals and, you know, it's done. I'm the one that took care of my life, not having to rely on someone else to, you know, take care of something that day they're gonna have so many more burdens that this could be like one thing that I didn't have to deal with.
Okay. Okay. So no financial burdens, no mental burdens.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm gonna tell you, especially from a parent standpoint, I mean, we're not supposed to bury our children. I mean, we just are not. And unfortunately, in this day and time, more and more so, we're having to do that. So, you know, for you to be able to chime in, to have a lighthearted conversation about, hey, look, you know, if something were to happen to me, this is what I would expect out of you guys. They would probably really appreciate it. And if you were to pass prematurely, because obviously if you in your 20s, a death like that is definitely premature when the good Lord says 3 score plus 10, which is 70 years, that's definitely premature. So for you to be able to do that and have a conversation with them, you know, I'm sure it's going to be shocking for them, but it's certainly going to be reassuring for them as well. Okay. You've never made funeral arrangements for anyone. I would expect at 22 you probably haven't. How much would you expect funeral arrangements to be? Around $20,000. You'd be surprised. You'd probably do a little cheaper than that, but that's a good number. If you had a choice between traditional ground burial and mausoleum, what would you choose? And you said ground burial. Let me ask you a question.
I checked both ground
And cremation. Okay.
Because I don't know that, I wouldn't know.
Okay. All right. In the event that you would pass a burial today, why would you purchase right now? Okay. All right. Okay. So we're gonna set that aside. So basically, what we're really talking about today is estate planning. Burial is part of estate planning. 95% of the decisions that need to be made all can be done in advance. Burial property actually goes up twice a year and doubles every 10 years. So you can imagine if you purchased it at 22 years old and you passed away at 70, how much more expensive it would be at 70 as opposed to what it is that you're doing at 22. Mm-hmm. But once you purchase it, once you start to pay for it, it's like anything else, it locks the price in. Here's the other thing too. You're young, you're not married, okay? And I would assume at some point in time, you're probably gonna take a suitor. At that point in time, you could take the property that you have currently, and you can get, if you wanted to, you could get a credit back against what you spent, and you and your wife could sit down together, decide what's in the best interest of the family, and in the money that you've already spent, you can transfer it to the new arrangement. The other thing is, God forbid if something happened, you know, to someone that you know, and let's say they were close to you, and they did not have anything. They weren't as fortunate as you were to have burial property. Burial property is transferable, okay? So even though you couldn't take the life insurance that you have and use it for anyone other than you, you can take the burial property you have and use it for anybody that you want. So from the standpoint of being able to help others, it's a great thing to do, okay? So in this book, there's 16 pages. There are not but 2 pages in here. The last 2 pages really that have anything to do with your final arrangements. Everything else has to do with the business that would be at hand of closing your estate after you pass away. As I told you, 95% of those decisions can be made in advance. So what you want to do is go through this thing and basically fill it out, take care of the tasks at hand, and then when you finish, sit down with your parents. Now, what we did was we sat down with the same people that we always sit down when we're going to make decisions. We sat down with clergy, accountant, an attorney, and other family estate planners like myself. We came up with this book. Basically, once you finish with this, the bulk of the decisions, the major decisions that need to be made will be done. There are 2 things that people will argue about, and that's money and decisions. And anytime someone passes, you can imagine that both those decisions come into play. As much as your parents love you, can you imagine what they would be going through if they got a phone call saying that their son's dead? And as young as you are. So the mere fact that you have the presence of mind to really sit down and start to look at this, like I said, I know it's going to be shocking to them, but it will be a huge sigh of relief, okay? So if you passed away last night, let's now take a look at what your parents would be doing today. Let's look at what they'd be doing. Let's look at how much you take off of them. Let's look at the number of decisions that you can make in advance. And let's take a look at basically how much of a comfort it would be to them knowing that, you know what, he's done all that. He's made all the decisions, okay? So, you passed away last night. And I'm not going to read this whole book to you, because you probably read and comprehend as well, if not better than I do. But I'm going to go through these questions so that you can ask me any information that you may need, and I can give you some clarification. So, if you passed away last night, the headings are notify immediately, decide and arrange a meeting to secure vital statistics, collect doctors, and pay for the file. Now, who are we going to notify? So we're going to notify the doctors, the funeral director, the cemetery, all your relatives and friends, employers of the deceased, employers of relatives missing work, insurance agents, such things as life insurance, health insurance, etc., organizations that may be part of your service, and because you were former military, you may want the military, to be part of it. And then the newspaper for obituary. Now let's stop right there. Are you aware that here in Greensboro, it's 50 cents a word? So I love you is $1.50, me too. If we say I love you, me too, it's $2.50, and all we said was I love you, me too. We spent $2.50. So you want to put as much information into that obituary as you want, or as little information as you want, okay? Now, on top of that, we can decide and make some arrangements. So we need to select the funeral director, meet with the funeral director, select the cemetery, purchase burial property, select the casket and the vault, arrange for the type of service that you want to have, military, etc. Decide on the location of the service, select clergy to officiate, provide information for the eulogy, select flowers, arrange for music. Now, that's 22 of 67. And as I told you, that's not everything. But you can imagine, that's a day's worth of work right there. And if you died today, which is Thursday, by next Wednesday or Thursday, we're probably going to want to have your service. We may have people coming from out of town. We've got to get over that initial shock. We probably have things pressing, in our own personal lives. And on top of all that, we've got to put everything aside and do what? So can you imagine what a help you're going to be? Even at 22. More so probably at 22. Okay? Now, on the next page, locate your personal documents. Now, you said that you live with your mother and father. Is that right? Okay. So, everything on this page, they're going to need to know where they are. So, do you have checking and savings accounts?
Yes, sir.
You have money in both accounts?
Yes, sir.
You have anybody else's name on those accounts?
I have one business account with a business partner.
Okay. But your personal accounts, you don't have anyone else's names? You got money in both checking and savings?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, if you passed away, your parents, could use that money to do various things. The way you have it set up right now, you got money in both accounts. How would your parents access those accounts? They wouldn't, because their name's not on it. Even though, because you're legal age. Okay. So right now, the way you have it, your money would become part of your estate. And until your estate is settled, that money's locked in place. So, you got a car?
Mm-hmm.
It's paid for?
Not quite.
Okay. So there's that payment that will need to be, and there may be enough money here to make those type payments.
Right.
Okay. But right now, the way you have it, they can't use that money. They're going to use their own money. So, I'm not a big proponent of you putting other people's names on the accounts, because if you do that, for instance, let's say you put your mom and your dad's, your business partner, for instance, if he or she has some issues with the IRS and the IRS garnishes their account, they're going to get yours too, because all they're doing is following that Social Security number. So as long as you're alive, give somebody a power of attorney. That way, if something happens to you, you're involved in a car accident, whatever the case may be, and maybe they have to induce, a medically induced coma so the body heals itself. While you're out, business is transpiring, right? Business is transacting.
Mm-hmm.
They can use that money. With a power of attorney, they can still conduct business on your behalf, even though you're not doing it. So when you come out, you're not behind, okay? But without that, they can't do anything. So that power of attorney is something that would be very important. Now, you gotta remember, upon your death, power of attorney is no more good. So one of the things that you may wanna do is contact your bank and say, hey, listen, I've got a business account, got personal accounts. In the event that something will happen to me, how can I set this up so that my family has access to this money? They can tell you exactly what you need to do, okay? All right, so let's see, deeds of real estate, you live at home so you don't have any property right now. Income tax returns, receipts, and checks. All right, so everything that you give your income tax preparer, your accountant, okay, that they use to do your taxes, that's the bulk of what someone would need in the event of a death to help close an estate, all right? So to keep them from having to recreate documentation or to have to rummage to look for it, take that information that you get back, put it all in place, and you want to keep 4 to 5 years worth of that all together. You can imagine if they had to assemble a team with an accountant and an attorney to recreate this information, can you imagine how expensive that would be?
It'd be pretty expensive.
Be very expensive. So by you doing it this way, you're eliminating them from having to do that, okay? Does anybody else know, do you have a DD-214?
Yes.
Does anybody else in your family know where it is?
They know it's in my room. I probably haven't told them.
Okay.
You know.
So, do you know where it is?
Yeah.
Okay. So, without that DD-214, there are a lot of benefits that you would have through Uncle Sam.
Right.
So, very important that you let somebody know where that is, and you can also take one of them downtown to the records office and register one there. That way, you've got one, but they know there's one there as well. Okay. Do you have a will yet?
I have the military one that I filled out one before deployment.
Okay. Do you still have it?
I don't think it's valid anymore because it was done through military, through JAG, and like life insurance and stuff was all through them. So and that life insurance expires in 3 months.
Okay.
So
Okay. Is it possible that life insurance can be transferable?
no, it's just like it's a $500,000 life insurance policy for like $20 a month. So
So it's not transferable.
yeah, it's like it's just a military. You know, if you die while in service.
Right. Okay, so let's talk about wills. All right, so your will is the least expensive way to protect your life's working savings. With a will, you're the one who makes these decisions, not a probate judge who's completely unfamiliar with your wishes. All right? So, if you die without a will, state law and a probate judge will determine who will administer your estate, who handles your finances, who will be the guardian of your minor children. With a will, you're the one who makes these decisions, not a probate judge who's completely unfamiliar with your wishes. Do you have any children?
No.
Okay, all right. So, based on what I just read, okay, if you pass away without this will, your family's having to try to figure it out. The will basically is a roadmap, for lack of better terms. It helps everybody to understand what your wishes were and what your intentions were. They can't read your mind in life, right? And you can't help them from the grave. So that will gives you the ability to conduct business, or someone else the ability to conduct business on your behalf after you pass away. It is very important. Now, here's the other thing. Sometimes a trust is better than a will, because there's never a will has been written that was not contestable. All wills are contestable. So in your very best efforts, do you have other siblings?
No.
Okay. So in your very best efforts, if you sit down and do a will and somebody reading that will, someone feels like that will was not done in fairness to them, they can go downtown to the probate court, file an injunction against the will, and guess what? Everybody got to get lawyered up. Okay? So it's very important that you at least do a will. The state of North Carolina is very lenient. They would allow you to take this piece of paper with that on that side and nothing on the other side, and you write everything out in your own handwriting, take it to a notary, have it notarized and signed in front of 2 witnesses, and guess what you got? You got a will. Some is better than none. Okay? Sometimes a trust is a little better than a will is, because they absolutely cannot be contested. That's the first thing. Secondly, let's just say that I know you're a military veteran, so you could go to a military facility. Everybody doesn't have that, that privilege. So, if someone has a will, went to the hospital. Let's say they had a stroke, went to the hospital. The first thing they're going to ask, even in your space, do you have a health care power of attorney, a living will, or a DNR? Do you have any of that done?
No.
Okay. So right now, even though your parents are your guardians, you're of legal age, they can't really speak for you. That's the first question that they would ask. Do you have a healthcare power of attorney, a living will, or DNR for your son? If the answer is no, because basically they want to know who has the right legally to speak for this young man. Okay? So, if they don't have that, let's just say that you already had a conversation and you said, Mom, you know what, if I can't, if something ever happens to me and I can't recover, you know, completely, let's not put me on, you know, on life support, because the Beth Healthcare insurance is going to pay about 80% of a hospital stay. It's the 26% that we're responsible for that can create financial ruins, okay? So let's just say that you had a stroke and that you recovered. Do you have long-term or short-term healthcare disability insurance?
Right now, I don't have anything but, you know, insurance.
Okay. So right now,
Well, I do technically. I do still have TRICARE until July.
Okay.
So that's full coverage. That's all 100%. I no deductibles, no down payments.
That's
All
good.
They pay for it.
Okay. But after that,
I don't have nothing else.
exactly. So that would be a burden on who? On your parents, probably. And they love their baby, like we all do. I've got 2 children, and I certainly love mine, and I would do anything I could. But long-term or short-term health care can be very expensive, okay? We're talking $4 to $5 grand a month, on top of everything else that they have. How much of that do you think your parents could stand, on top of everything else that they have?
They're
At 60
struggling
years
with
old.
their own health
Right.
care,
Exactly.
you know, bills. So.
Exactly. So my point is, with this, the way you have it currently, any assets that you do have, first of all, Medicaid, Medicare, one of them is not going to pay anything because you probably got over $2,500 in a bank account somewhere. Okay, so if you got over $2,500 in assets, it's not going to pay. The other one will now pay, but they can also request an inventory of assets, go through everything, request that you sell off various things, and give them the proceeds from it to help offset what it is they're getting ready to spend. Now, if you had all these things in the McNeil Trust, they couldn't touch it. You get to keep these assets, and you get the benefits of them paying for these. But it's all about the way that we set it up. But see, if we don't have these conversations, we don't set any of this up, look what happens. There's nothing wrong with risk, but there is something wrong with risk that we don't understand the ramifications of it. You're getting a better picture now of some of the decisions that you made, aren't you? Okay, all right. So it's very important that you do that will or that you have a trust, okay? Now, have you decided if something were to happen to you, who would be the executor of your estate?
No.
Okay, all right. So that's another decision you need to decide. And I oftentimes suggest to people that they have executor A and executor B. In the event that something happens to A, you still have B. A and B can work together. Okay? A is the person who can override and make all the decisions, but in the event that something happens to A, you still got B, and the two of them can work, you know, can work in concert for one another. If you get an attorney, his or her information goes here at the bottom. Okay? Stop me if you have any questions, because I'll get going through this and, you know, we won't make it back. Now, does your mom or your dad know where your birth certificate is? And I need the birth certificate with the raised letter and the certified copy of it. Do you have one of those?
Yes, they don't know who that is.
Okay, all right. We need a social security card, not the number. Do you know where your social security card is, or do they?
They don't, but I do.
Okay, all right. The insurance that you talked about that you have currently, do they know where those?
Probably not. I don't even have paperwork for it because it's not. There's no paperwork to it. You take I still have my military ID, and then I literally take that and show them, and that just they know what that means. Hospitals know exactly what that means.
Okay. Do your parents know about it?
I don't think they know that that's how it works. They know that how my insurance works because I mean they're envious of it, but I don't think that they realize that it's.
So let me ask you a question. How would they be able to help you if they don't know where that?
Right.
You see where I'm going with this?
Mm-hmm.
So, and you ride up and down the road every day between here and Greensboro.
Right.
Some of the most dangerous highways in the state.
Mm-hmm.
People texting, people talking on the phone, people upset about things that happened last night. They're not paying attention. So, the risk for something to happen to you really does exist.
Right.
So we just need to make sure that if it does, that they have some understanding about how they can help you after the fact.
Right.
But you got to be proactive in that. Okay. All right. So, do you use any safety deposit boxes?
I don't have one right now, no.
Okay. All right, deeds for burial property and funeral arrangements. So what you want to do is you want to go through here, get all this stuff into a central location, put it all together, okay? And you want to make sure that your parents know where all this is located, okay? Also, you want to put this stuff somewhere where if the house burns or there's floods, this information doesn't get destroyed. Because we've talked about a lot so far, we're not finished. Can you imagine that stuff got destroyed?
Mm-hmm.
What an issue it would be in trying to recreate it?
Right.
Okay, all right. So, all right, on this next page, medical history. You want to put down as much information as you can here, okay? Because basically we're talking about the more information that doctors have about medical history of a family, the easier it is for them to come up with a proactive regimen toward health. Once again, you don't want things to, you know, even with your own parents, you want to make sure that you have all this information for them. Because let me ask you a question. Just what we have so far, how much of this stuff do you know about for your own parents?
Little to none. I mean, I know some of it, but not enough to even get me. Not even enough to be worth saying.
And you're the only child?
Right.
Okay. So can you imagine if you came to work one day and something happened to mom and dad?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So it's very important.
Right.
Because just like they're your life link,
Mm-hmm.
you're theirs.
Right.
So you all need to sit down and really have some conversations, you know, about, hey, look, in the event this happens, what do we do? Here's what I want you all to do. What do you all want me to do? What do you expect me to do? Here's what I expect of you. So, you know, we're getting to that age where for a long time your parents probably kept information from you because,
Yep.
you know, but there comes a time when we now start sharing information. That's where we are. That's where you are with your parents. That's where they are with you. Okay? So even though I'm talking to you today, I can give you an extra one of these, and you need to sit down with your parents and make sure that you've got all their information as well, because guess what? If something happens to you, what do we do?
Right.
Okay? All right, so checking account information. So I noticed you said you had personal accounts and you also have a business account.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so they need checking account numbers for both of them, saving account numbers, locations, down at the bottom, credit cards. All right, so do you have credit cards?
One.
Okay. Do you have a balance on that card?
Unfortunately, so
Okay.
yes. Well,
Okay.
I don't want to know anything else out on me, any credit.
All right, so does it have accidental life insurance coverage or does it have credit life? Because if you pass away, there's a balance on that card, your estate is still responsible for paying that balance. Do you have accidental life insurance coverage or credit life on it?
I don't think I have either, unless Navy Federal.
Start right there.
Yeah.
Now you said think.
Mhm.
So if you don't know, you know mom and dad don't know.
Right.
Okay? So one of the things that you need to do is Visa, MasterCard, American Express, whoever it is, call them, give them the last 4 digits of the card, ask them, do I have accidental life insurance coverage or credit life? Because oftentimes the provider will give you that.
Mhm.
Because what they're trying to do is protect their own interests. They've seen instances where people pass, they got stuck with a bill, okay? So they're trying to protect their own, but in doing so, they're also protecting you. But how can you use something you don't know exists?
Right.
Okay, so that's something you need to find out. If they tell you that you don't have it, you may need to ask them, is it available? Because oftentimes you're talking about a nominal fee to protect thousands of dollars. We're talking about preservation here, okay? All right, so stocks and bonds, other information there at the bottom, all right? Now, insurance policies, all right. The insurance that you have,
Mm-hmm.
that they don't know about, okay? Put that information here, the name of the company, name of the agency, telephone number, name of the insured, face amount of the policy, who the beneficiary is, and the policy owner. With that information and a death certificate, your parents can now collect what? On your life insurance policy, okay? Do you travel at least 100 miles or more away from home at least once a year?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Well, I mean, I just moved back home when I was 1,200 miles away. So.
Okay, all right. So we now have something called travel care.
Mhm.
You're traveling and you're 100 miles or more away from home and you pass away, it pays everything that's associated with you getting back. Give you a prime example. My sister had a friend of hers who was a principal, and one of the things that she had decided on her bucket list was that when she passed away, she wanted to go to Australia. Well, not when she passed away, I'm sorry. When she retired, and I kind of like passing away. When she retired, she wanted to go to Australia. So she retired. She used points. She did all kinds of things to do it as inexpensive as possible, because that's a very expensive trip. She went to Australia, and when she got there 2 days later, God forbid she passed away. Now, can you imagine how expensive it is? Because now what's got to happen? So her parents here in stateside are getting a phone call that says your daughter's passed away. Last time they saw her was on Facebook, alive and well. Can you imagine the shock? Now they've got to get from here to Australia. Now, unfortunately, the airlines don't do bereavement fare anymore. So once upon a time, you called them and said, hey, listen, I've got to get to Australia. My daughter passed over. They didn't give you a break on the price. They don't do that anymore. So whatever it costs is what it costs. So can you imagine how expensive it would be to get a ticket today to Australia? And guess what? You have no choice. You got to do it. Because your child is in a foreign country, passed away. So not only do you have to get there, but now you got to pay for lodging. Now you got to decide, you know what, is this a reputable company that I'm dealing with? Are they not reputable? Are they charging me too much money, not enough money? Then after you get all that done, you got to deal with customs. Then you've got to get them slated to fly back. Now you know how expensive it is to fly over there as a passenger. Can you imagine how expensive it is to fly back as
your luggage is a casket?
Right. So we have something called travel care for $490 for the rest of your life. If you're traveling and you're 100 miles or more away from home, it pays everything associated with you getting back. So if she had travel care, rather than her family having to fly over there and incur all that expense, all they do is pick up the phone, make a phone call, say, okay, this is who passed away, this is their account number. Then the company calls back and says, okay, here's the name of the funeral home that has your loved one. Here's when he or she's going to be able to travel. Here's the airline they're going to travel on. Here's when they're leaving. Here's the airport they're going to be flying back into the United States. Here's when they'll get through customs. Here's when we'll get them to Greensboro. What funeral home do you want us to contact to come get them? All for $495. I promise you, if you're in Charlotte and you pass away, it's going to be more than $495 to get you back to Charlotte. Because first of all, you can't go across county lines without being embalmed. It's more than $495 to embalm someone. Now you got to embalm them. You got to prepare them for shipping. You got to get a courier to go down there and get them and come back. For the rest of your life, $495. So, as we go through this, if I forget, ask me for that, because I know you want that, right? Mm-hmm. All right. Now, and sometimes I do forget. Now, you're a veteran. If you want Uncle Sam to participate, that's the number they need to call. And basically, he can tell them everything that you're entitled to. Okay. Now, once you get married, it's a $255 death benefit that the surviving spouse gets. This tells you how to go about getting it. Okay. Now, we've talked about a lot up to this point, but none of us had to do anything with your final arrangements. This has been all about the business that would be in hand to make sure that, you know what, for lack of better terms, it's as easy a transition for a family as possible. None of this is going to be easy, but it may be easier because you participate in doing things proactively. Now, on these last couple of pages is where we start now to look at and craft what your final arrangements look like. So, this is where you're going to put the information that's going to go into your obituary, as much as you want or as little. Okay? Because who knows better what you want to be remembered for than you do. Okay? You can even write that obituary in advance if you want to. All right? Death certificate. Every line's got to have an answer, and it's got to be legible. Okay? Because if it's not legible or if it doesn't have an answer, they're going to send it back, and you can't do anything until you get a death certificate. Now, it's got to be a certified death certificate. It cannot be a copy. Okay? So you need to bear that in mind. Now, funeral preference. So, your full name, where you want the service to be, whoever you want to officiate. If you want someone other than your current minister, you put their information here. If there are particular clothing or color schemes that you feel like you look best in, that you want them to use, you can put that information here. If there are particular flowers that you're fond of, that you want that spray to be made of, it would go there. If there are particular psalms or passages from the Bible that you live by, okay, that you would think best described who you were, you can put that here. Now, let me ask you a question. Have you ever seen a minister try to eulogize someone that he or she didn't know?
Yes.
Very difficult, wasn't it?
It was kind of awkward. Because especially if you knew them.
Right, very awkward. And to your point, especially if you're sitting in the pews, okay? Now, imagine if he or she had this information. particular psalms or passages from the Bible about that deceased person. From a biblical contact, that tells them a lot about who that person was. Now they can speak to that, and those of us that are watching that day, especially if we know that those are that gives us what? Some peace of mind. That gives us, a reason to smile. And you know what? The good Lord said that He would send you a comforter. Never said He'd come Himself. But can you see by having all this information, how much of a comforter He just created for you? And how much easier things would be? Because this is a lot of information. Not to mention that when that day comes, everybody's got to be agreeable. Everybody's got to be in agreement about what happens. Or somebody has got to overrule someone else. And oftentimes when that happens is when risks form in our families that our families never recover from. And to add insult to injury, not only did we lose a loved one, but we lost some other loved ones because of, I can't say it's 100%, but this certainly lessens the opportunity for that to happen. Because once again, remember, we started talking about this initially. Two things people argue about: money and what? Decisions. Okay? A lot of decisions here. All right. So, check the following. So, if you want to have a viewing, you check yes. If you don't, check no. If you check yes, write out here as long as I look like myself. Because if you die on a Thursday, they don't find you until Monday. Or if you have some long drawn out illness, with cancer, or die in a fiery car crash, there certainly are people in the death industry who can take a picture, look at it, and with wax recreate what they see. But we're trying to control cost, okay? This gives the family an out, okay? Eulogy, yes or no. Glasses or jewelry, yes or no. Memorial service, yes or no. And then down here at the bottom is where you're going to put names, addresses, and telephone numbers of people who can be of assistance to the family. Let me ask you a question. Who's the first person you think you put here?
My mom.
Okay. What's her name?
Sandy.
Sandy what?
McNeil.
Okay. Who's the next person you put?
My dad.
Okay. And his name is?
Ricky.
Okay. And who's the third person you put?
My girlfriend.
Okay. And what's her name?
Anna.
Okay. And what's her address?
Montgomery County.
Okay, I got you. And telephone number. Basically, what you're doing here is you're creating leads for yourself. These are people that you want to call. Okay. Now, one of the things that I'm going to do for you is I'm going to call these people for you just to let them know that you put them in this book so they won't be caught off guard. And I'm also going to see if they don't have one of these, if I can set up an appointment to sit down and take them one too. Is that okay with you? Okay. See what I just did?
Right.
All right, so crematorium memorialization. So, should you decide to use our services here at Lakeview, my information will go here, Lakeview's information will go there. I would assume that it's either going to be ground burial or some type of cremation arrangement, okay? Once you make that decision, the location of the burial right will go here. If you choose ground burial, you have to have a vault by law, okay? So whatever type of vault you choose is going to go here. If there's a particular type of casket you like, hardwood, metal, other, going to denote it there. Sometimes people like to have benches within cemetery somewhere they can sit and meditate in close proximity to their loved ones. So if you'd like to have one of those, I can certainly help you with that as well, and we'll put that here, okay? If you want your family present during the closing of the grave, you check yes. You don't, check no. If you prepay for the opening and closing, once upon a time you couldn't, now you can. You're gonna check prepaid. If you purchase that travel care that we talked about, you're gonna check travel care. You're gonna put the contact name and number here. And then down here at the bottom, it says additional remarks, special instructions, items replaced with remain. So, for instance, if you wanted to say, the gold watch that I love so much, I want to have that on during the wake. But before they close the casket, you come up and get it, I want so-and-so to have it. Still gives you the ability to make decisions, okay? Now, on this last page, once you complete this, it says, to our loved ones, with deep love for you, we complete the family planning guide. Our sincere desires to relieve your anxiety, expense, and inconvenience at the time of our death. We have made our burial arrangements in advance so that you will not be forced to make sudden and costly decisions on a day already filled with sorrow. It is especially important we let you know how gratified we feel that we made these decisions. We know you're now protected against loss of insurance, government benefits, other personal possessions that we want you to have. And having our estate in order gives us peace of mind. We trust that these arrangements are satisfactory, help keep alive warm and tender memories of times we shared together. Now, once you finish it, you're going to print, sign, and date it. Now, that's a lot of information. It's going to take you some time to do it. So it's very important that, like I said again, Once you finish it, sit down with your loved ones, go through that information with them. Now, here's the other thing. Imagine if something happened to you. And when your parents went into your room, they found this book. And there was nothing in it. And they started looking through it. They said, what is that? I said, I don't know. It's like some kind of planning guide. You know, all these decisions that we were talking about, they're in here. He never filled it out. Gosh, I wish he had it. It would make things so much easier for us. Now, imagine the same scenario. They're going in, they find it, and they're anguishing over all these decisions they're going to have to make, and they find this book. You never got a chance to talk to them about it. They start looking through it, and everything in here is checked off. All the information's in place. Can you imagine what a relief? Can you imagine what a blessing? So, very important that not only do you do this for yourself, and I'm going to give this to you because that's yours, but also you need to sit down with your parents and secure that information and let them tell you, because just like it would be difficult for you if they passed away, if you pass away, it's going to be difficult for them. It's the same thing. So while we have the time, let's spend it, deciding what it is that we want to happen. And when that day comes, it's a tough day, but it's not as tough as it would be. That makes sense to you?
Right.
Okay. That's it.